Do you have those tight hip flexors on you? Have you been stretching it over and over again with no results? If so, you're in luck, because I'm going to show you the secret way to unlock your hip flexor muscles. So let's get right into it. Most people are familiar with the traditional hip flexor stretch from this half kneeling position where we might tuck the tail between our legs or posterior pelvic tilt, drive hips forward, feel a good stretch there, having a good time. But there's more we could do to enhance the stretch further. So from the front, the typical stretch is posterior pelvic tilt, drive forward. I feel a stretch through here, which is good. But we can enhance that by just adding some simple movements. I'm going to show you how to do a triplanar hip flexor stretch where we want to stretch the middle fibers of the muscles. But we also want to get the outside and the inside near the groin. So first, let's upgrade the stretch that everybody knows. When we posterior pelvic tilt, drive forward, you're going to bring hands overhead like we got a touchdown. And as you drive forward, you're going to start to bring those arms behind you. So this allows us to get our full body in the stretch, but also amplifies that hip flexor stretch because now we're tightening the fascial slings above the hip flexor and below, so we get that nice fulcrum right in the middle. From the side, feel go good. Go ahead, tuck, drive forward, lean back. You should feel this enhance that deep, deep stretch that we all know and love. Now that's part one of the triplanar stretch. Part two, I'll do it on my other side just to keep it in balance for you. So again, we're going to be in this half kneeling position. I'm going to tuck my tail, drive hips forward, but this time we're going to get some of those outside fibers. So now I'm going to drive forward, lean over the top. You should feel a more enhanced stretch in the outside of those hip flexor fibers, and you get a little bit of that TFL muscle, maybe a little bit of that IT band if it's super duper tight. From the side, half kneeling, tuck, arm up, over the top, reaching as we drive hips forward. And I'm already feeling loose, but wait, there's more. So I'm going to go back to my left side here. Now we're going to start getting some of those inside fibers. So if you haven't caught on by now from this half kneeling position, we're always going to start with that posterior pelvic tilt. And then now as I drive forward, I'm going to rotate away from the side that I'm stretching. So basically just twisting as we drive forward. So that way, by adding this last part, we're getting a stretch in all three planes of motion. Number one being the sagittal plane, and then the coronal plane or the side-to-side plane, and then now that rotation. Whew, and both my hips are already feeling loose, but to maximize this stretch, I like doing a good 5 reps of each of those directions at one time. So if I was going to start the stretch from scratch, I'm going to tuck, I'm going to get that sagittal plane with those reaches over the top. I'm going to do a good 5 here. And then we're going to get into that coronal plane, doing a good 5 over the top. And then lastly, we're going to get the 5 in that rotation or that transverse plane. In less than 1 minute, I was able to stretch every fiber of the hip flexor in all 3 directions, and then I'd simply just stretch the other side. Now, if you want more of a challenge, what you can do is you can just cycle through the movements. So I can go sagittal, coronal, and then rotational or transverse. Whatever helps you sleep at night, doesn't really matter, you're still getting the same stretch. After doing our secret stretch, get back up, see how that hip feels. Should feel a lot looser, especially if your hip flexor muscles are tight. If you have a lot of tension or you've been dealing with chronic tightness, this is something you might want to do daily, if not twice a day, something to prime our hips in the morning and in the evening, or I love doing this as a warm-up, especially before a lower body dominant day. Typically, I do 2 to 3 rounds of this, and that gets me where I need to go. Again, if you have more tightness, you might want to do this more than just once a day. Do you want to know how I open up hip range without stretching at all? Well, then check out this video for more hip content.